that's my boy. T-H-E-R-E, Daddy. If you can't do anything but say, that's my boy, be there.
Be there.
And that a boy means a whole lot. That a boy.
Because that's what we are doing, just being there. Yeah, we're going to bring intelligence and knowledge and wisdom and whatever with it. But the key is going to be being there.
Being there. That makes a difference. Wow. You know,
temperature went up a couple of degrees.
It certainly did. It certainly did because it's resonating.
The chief started something over there now with his Baptist self.
It's funny that you say it that way, Chief. But one of the things that I do at the beginning of my show is I quantify who I am and what I'm about. And I tell them, I said, look, I don't claim to be an expert on any of these topics that I bring to your hearing. I am not an expert on all of this. I know what I know, and that's all I know, okay? But I can say this with a great deal of surety. I am a man.
Yes, sir.
I am a Christian man, and I am a happily married man. So those three things include. Now, I try to promote that in every setting.
He is there.
He was there.
He's just there.
He was there. T-H-E-R-E.
That's right.
There.
Right. All right.
WCEG 678-619-1402. Listen, you can't pay for this kind of knowledge in this day and age. I was raised up, I didn't have access to. And Chief said, be there. That's the first step of being that man that helped changing our communities. Simply be there.
Be there.
And last time I checked, it didn't cost nothing to be there.
See, Grandma and Granddaddy was always there. They were my grandparents were my heroes.
Wow.
They couldn't read and couldn't write, but man, some of the stuff they said still lives, which causes them to still be alive in me. They ain't dead. They alive in me.
Got you.
My daddy's daddy said the bottom wasn't made for you. Said that to me all my young life. And nobody can do everything, but never fail to do that you can. I mean, they were just all those kinds of things. They couldn't. My grandmama, who was saying, "Boy, God don't like ugly." And every time you see me, I'm trying to do something about it.
Well, and all of those old sayings that they used to tell us, I can remember being that little smart-aleck kid that thought it was just the silliest things in the world. They had no pertinence in my life and what I was going through and what I was dealing with at the time. But that's the thing about wisdom. You know what I mean? It kind of gets sticky. Once you walk through it, once you come in contact with it, you can't help but a little bit of it sticking on you some kind of way. And it may be at the time when you least expect. I remember 19 years old. I grew up in, like I said before, in South Fulton County before South Fulton County was cool. I mean, really. People said South Fulton County and I almost laughed at the end of it because, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for a young black man growing up in Fairburn, Palmetto, Union City, some parts of College Park, and these are all these right now. I guess people consider them pretty nice places to live at times. But when I was growing up, boy, take him out of South Fulton County, Georgia, in 1960 something, and ship him up north. And not just up north, way up north. All right, I was almost Canadian. All right, so I was put into some situations and some circumstances that you would think on the outside looking in, there was no way I could ever have been prepared for. Right? No way. This little country boy, all he know how to do is run a football and talk too much. Okay, that's always been a gift or a curse, depending on which side of the conversation you on. But I've always had the gift of gab, and at one time I could play a little football. But here I am up there, so far away from mama, so far away from grandmama, granddaddy. I'm talking about people who grew up in inner cities in Detroit and New York and Philadelphia and places I only saw on a map in geography class. And they grew up in that inner city thing, and they had some tricks for me. They had some influences for this little country boy. All right? I thank God today for all this kind of mess. And their words came back to me crystal clear. Just as like they did sitting out there around the old pot-bellied stove, I heard what my granddaddy said. I heard what my grandmama said. And it saved me from some of that trouble. Now, I'm here to tell you today, like Lev and I were talking a little while ago, I haven't always been the police. And I haven't always been right. I haven't always been upright in my doings and goings and coming and thinking. But I've always had a center that I could get back to that was instilled in me in a time when I would need it later. Did that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Crystal clear. You had a support system. You that value system.
You telling a lot that just wasn't, how would I say, up to par. To his family knew that you lying, and everybody else knew that you lying. So just try to be relevant. Do what you got to do to make things. If you don't go all the way right, get close as you can.
In the church, they call that test the line.
Test the line.
Exactly right. Not test the line, but
test the line.
Say, Mr. Wells, Lev, as we call him, don't have a whole lot to say, but he has a whole lot to do. And the majority of what he will leave can only be expressed in one word: legacy.
Legacy.
The legacy that he leaves is burnt, indelibly printed, welded, if you will, in the minds of those young men is what will make the difference. What he does to their minds with his know-how, with his talent, is the center cryone of his being, that without him, they would be nothing.
Wow.
All of those people that he leaves something with. And we all are that way if we really think about it. But one of the things that most of us do, like the preacher there and myself, we are gifted because of those grandpapas with a whole lot of gift of talking. We're good at that, but a lot of what we talk about comes from the fact that we've lived at that address before.
Wow.
We've been a part of the same thing. And hadn't it not been for the good Lord on our side, where would we be? If you grew up in some of the neighborhoods that I grew up in Summer Hill, and Pittsburgh, and College Park, and Hampton, Georgia, during the period of segregation, where you couldn't walk on this side of the street, but you can walk on that side of the street, where the pavement in at the white neighborhood be the first. When you start the first day in the police department, over the first 5 years, your mind is beginning to be socialized in the manner of the system and how it acts and treats people. And you have to stay on them, teaching them different ways. Other than that, they bring unacceptable behavior to your force. Community-oriented policing, hear me well, radio audience, need to be turned into community-oriented government,
Wow.
All of us need to be taught and trained how to treat people. You see, if you hear a person who's in charge sitting back to office and he curses somebody on the phone and nothing is said about that, the officer will go out there and curse somebody in the community. And so as I promoted police officers to the higher ranks, my first charge to them, be their best example. And I've taught in police departments all over the country about how to get along with the black community. Go out in your community and see that little grandma sitting on the front porch watering or standing on the front porch watering her flowers. Go up and have a conversation with her. She can tell you more about the neighborhood than anybody else.
Yes, she will.
She can tell you about Miss Jones' grandson. He ain't gonna do nothing but drink some liquor. He ain't gonna bother nobody. But if you call Miss Jones, she'll come get him. So you ain't gotta lock him up to save him. You can save him by knowing your community from the top to the bottom. And that's what government officials, from the mayor down, from the commission chairman down, from the police chief down, need to do. Get to know the community. And once you do that, we all will be community oriented.
That's amazing. Get to know your community. Just expounding on that from a law enforcement point of view, I know when we got put in the cars, we running so many calls that no one cared anymore to take the time to know the community because you got calls backing up. We got efficiency experts coming in telling us, well, you should only need X amount of minutes per call to be able to get to the next. They took the community policing out of policing. We didn't know none of the people in our areas that we were working, regardless of what beat, until you had to take a report. You had the attitude of resentment because every day you're feeling like nobody appreciated you, but the workload got higher and the pay got lower. Then you want to call my EJ hours. I can't work a side job because you tell me you can only do 20 hours, but I can barely feed myself, much less the family and the rest. At some point, even our officers are having mental health problems. They're having relationship problems, having family problems. An officer is no different than the community that they come from.
Oh, Lord. Let me answer two things for you right quick.
Yes, sir.
One is, I am your chief. The speed of the boss is the speed of the crew. If I don't care about them, you ain't going to care about them.
That's it.
If I know what your situation is, what in the hell did I go to all these schools for if I don't know how to manage minutes, not just men? You see, I love to have Saturday and Sunday off. But when is the public off? Saturday and Sunday. So I need more police officers on Saturday and Sunday. I can't let them off on Saturday and Sunday too. So we have to be there when the community is there, in the community. That's one. Number two is, if we manage the call, if you left home and somebody stole your car, why is it important to get you out there in 3 minutes and they stole it yesterday? I can send you out there tomorrow when calls are slow, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Ma'am, I make an appointment to send the police officer to your house. We thought we were impressing somebody by running all over the place. We were tearing up more than $25,000 worth of equipment running back and forth up and down the street. See, instead of managing that situation, that's what we need. And people will say to our mayors, even right here in the city of Atlanta, if we give them more money, they'll stay. No, they won't. If you give them good leadership, they'll stay. Even if they aren't getting the money, because you will taught them the value of loyalty, the value of caring about the community, whether they live in it or not. So there are a lot of things that's why I say we got to be teaching you all constantly See, but remember, Jesus didn't lead until he left.
Wow.
Police chief, I didn't lead until I left, but while I was there, wasn't but one person, black, running that department. And a white man from Thomaston, Georgia said, I grew up a redneck, and we didn't like black folks, but I love you. Why do you love me? Because your foot don't care who's what it kicks. So we have got to stop these falsettos that we're giving our government officials, making them think we're doing something. And by the way, I want to send a shout out to Chief Shields for doing an excellent job doing the
yes, it
Super
was.
Super Bowl.
We worked our butt off, but it was an excellent job.
All of you and Chief Shields deserves our hats off, because the speed of the boss was the speed of the crew.
And I tell you what was so impressive about Super Bowl, not just that Sunday, but all the activities leading up. I've never seen so many different agencies, statewide, nationwide, federal-wide, working together conductively. But most important, all the local state agencies was beautiful, because I came in contact with officers I never even knew existed, much less the agencies. And one shared philosophy that, as Chief stated, everybody.
You will not fight your brother or your sisters. You will not go outside and do that. We have got to make value rules for our children. Stop coming up to the school. And I had this as a commander. But I told the principal every time an irate mama or daddy come up here, call me. And when I get there, now, what is your, my child, my child, my child, my child. You through? Officer Janice Jackson, put her in jail.
Wow.
The buck stops here. And I better not catch the principal's car scratched.
I had a similar concept about it when I was the commander, and I came up through the ranks. I started out as a patrol officer, and made sergeant, and made detective, and made chief of detectives, and finally I made chief of police. And one of the things I had to do, I went to the police academy again, and to learn how to be a chief. You go to the academy to learn how to be a police officer, but they got another academy they send you when you make chief. And I'm proud to say to this day that I graduated from the police academy as a police chief with former Chief Harvard. She and I were in the same class. We were in the graduating class together.
I used to teach that course.
Well, I told you we go back further than we want to bring up in public. But I was there, okay? So at any rate, one of the things they told me in that class, one of the topics they got was they said that you'll be responsible for hiring 75 to 80% of the people who work under your command. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, because I'd already been working in law enforcement about 20 years before I made chief, and the people that were, that I had worked beside and under and around were by and large still there. Right. So why all of a sudden now we're going to get to the point where I've got to hire? Well, I found out quickly that that was true. I got into a situation where I was having to replace people very, very quick. And I really didn't put a lot of thought into it, because I'm thinking, okay, well, then it dawned on me, wait a minute. I'm responsible for somebody who's going to be going out here in the city that I love, armed with a weapon that I provide for him, carrying policies and procedures that I've got to back up no matter what the circumstances of the situation is. I best have some input as to who this individual is.
Yeah, you better know.
Okay? So I started paying attention. And so this is one of the things that I learned over time was, and it was my mantra as a police chief was when I don't care who you were, we had review boards and hiring boards and testing process. And my signature is the one that's going to put him out there. And before he or she goes out there, they got to pass the smell test with me, okay? Because if you weren't qualified, you wouldn't be here. So that elimination process should have weeded you out long before now. So if you've gotten to the point where we're even considering hiring you, obviously you must have been qualified. But I did not hire qualifications. I hired people. Okay? So now I'm going to bore you all with an isomism. A Mike Isom story that's from the heart. I told you about my grandparents, and they lived on the outskirts of South Fulton County, almost in Coweta County. My parents got divorced at a very young age, and when I was a very young age. And my mother did what good girls did back in those days. She took her and her children back to her mama's house. So now we went from anyway, I'm trying to figure out some kind of way to describe it because it doesn't fit anything that anybody that lives in South Fulton County would recognize these days. But where we lived at that particular time in my life, my brother and I had this game. We could go out in the middle of the road and lay down on the yellow line in the middle of the road. And we could lay there for hours and never have to move because there was no traffic coming in either direction. Wow. Hours. The school bus dropped us off. It was like we were the last kids on the bus because we were so far out in the sticks. That's how far now. Fortunately for me, in my indoctrination, that only lasted for a couple of years, but therein lies where this story comes from. My mother took us back out there to live with her parents because she couldn't afford to pay anybody else. And as I said before, she was working in the daytime and going to school at night, and my grandparents were around, so we were there. But we lived in a 2-bedroom house with no running water, no indoor toilet, no microwave. None of that was it. There was one with her life. You wasn't getting to use that phone. So the point I'm trying to make is you didn't have any contact with it. Right, outside world. Now, my grandmother got up every morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It was ungodly time in the morning. I don't know what. And she would make breakfast for everybody in that house. Now, I want to point this out to you, that what happens is now, my mother was there. My mother was in her early 30s. She had 3 boys. My uncles, I had 2 uncles who had been married and divorced, and they were back home, okay? My grandmother had a sister that had been hospitalized, had 3 teenage daughters, and my grandmother elected to bring those 3 teenage daughters into that house. The storyline is this. There were 13 children. My father had rigged up a pump that we dropped down in the well and hooked up a series of PVC pipe, and you hook the cord together, and the pump started pumping and pump water in the kitchen through a PVC pipe, not a spigot. Just a pipe through the wall, and you could run water. Had to heat it up. So in other words, very rustic. Is that a good word? It's very, very rustic. But anyway, my grandmother, so you would get up every morning and prepare these expansive meals, biscuits and chicken and sausage and all this wonderful food. It would just be out on, and little kids, we had no idea. It just magically appeared. But all of this food will be on the table for everybody. Now, I want you to take the personalities into place. We've got a mother who's gone through a bitter divorce. And even though she got her children in the house, she elected not to live in that house and brought her children there because she was going to school there. We've got two men that were in their mid-30s that had marriages that failed for whatever reason. They had some issues they were working through. We had teenage girls ranging from 13 up to 19. Then we had adolescent boys between the ages of 5 and 11. And all of these people were in this little 2-bedroom house. And every morning and every evening as well, there was meals prepared for everybody to sit and eat. Now you bring all of that to the table, right? Everybody, my grandmother had one rule. Everybody in the house comes to the table to eat. Together. Now, the hard-headed boys over there, the frisky girls over here, bitter old drunken uncles over here, mama got issues, everybody got issues, everybody got issues. And we come together around this table. And my grandmother would say, I don't care who you are. I don't care what life has brought your way, what issues you're trying to work through. You don't bring that mess
to the table.
To my table.
Wow.
Okay? You don't bring that mess to my table. So now, what's that got to do with being the police chief? I sit down and tell these guys this story, and they be looking at me like, where's the chief going with this? I thought we were going to talk about protocol and esprit de corps, and he's been talking about some poor black folk down in the country. I said, I want you to get this. You think this is going to be one of them rag to riches stories. You thinking you got it all figured out. You know what I'm about to say. You're wrong. I'm going to tell you what I'm about to say. This is my table. I've been working for a long time to set this table. Every plate is in place. All the food is set, and I'm inviting you to the table. Now, wherever you come from, whatever you got going on in your psyche, your personality, your religious indoctrination, your sexual preference, I could care less. Don't bring that mess to my table.
Yeah.
Okay? I think you're following me.
And let the church say
And when they looked at me at the end of that conversation, that was a smell test.
Speed of the ball.
How, and you know what, don't bring them. I don't care if you a man that hate women, that's your business. If you're a man that love men, that's your business. I don't care what your proclivity is. When you put that badge on, when you put that uniform on, when you put my patches on your shoulder, you coming to the table I have prepared for you. Don't bring your mess to my table.
Amen.
We need to get some of that back into business, don't you think?
Yes, sir.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to the speed of the boss and the speed of the crew. And I think that certainly lends itself to support what Lev Wells is talking about today. And the beauty of what he's talking about doing, it fits right on your table. Because he's taking them out of their mess and bringing them to a table that he has prepared for them to become valued and productive citizens in their society. And no matter what it is, when they come to that table, they can't bring all that with them.
Can't bring your mess.
Can't bring your mess
don't
there.
need no
You
mess.
got to take it over here. And I wanted to get back to that because I think that was what your program started today. But what we just got through talking about, all of us collectively, has been back to where we must go. The value of the black family. No matter if it's poor than poor. If poor is a step up, it's still about family and family values. Granny didn't have no education, no etiquette classes and all that stuff before she set the table. But she had somewhere along the way, from people that I call the best of the best, that's who was the slaves. They were the best of the best. Somewhere they had given her and left her that value. And that's what we all, each one of us, individually and collectively, and I believe Mr. Wells is about ready to give Chief his certification.
Yeah, that's right.
About ready to give him his certification, but it's all about the black family. All about the black family.
And I love you at the Medicine Man. Every time we have contact, there's always something good coming out of our conversation. Lev Wells is the God-given, your mother and daddy, Lev Wells. But to me, it's always been those pills of wisdom that you drop. And between Chief Isom and Chief Bell,
Oh, yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, Community Talk Radio, what WCEG stands for, is really about empowering our community. It's about reaching out to the titans of our community and showing that, as Chief Bell said, you don't have to do everything, but do something. Well, we're at this point now.
Procedure, and let me clarify what I mean by that. One of the things that in law enforcement, the challenge is that we have to keep, as the chief said, retraining our officers on every level, from the bottom to the top, to understand that you're dealing with people who are going through something. That you can't look at people and just lump them into a category. They're all the same. They're all criminals. They're all victims. They're all complainers. And when I felt like, if looking at my own career, I had this thing. I had other things came into play, of course, but I always thought to myself that if I ever got to the point where when I look out of the window of my patrol car or my office or whatever my profession put me into it at that time, and all I saw was offenders and victims and witnesses, and I didn't see people, then it's probably time for me to move on and find some other way to earn some money. Mm-hmm. Because all these offenders are people. That's somebody's son, somebody's daughter, that's somebody's father, uncle. He's an offender. Okay, sure. He made that choice. So you've got to deal with that, but he's more than an offender. Okay, this person who's a victim of this crime, they start, if they didn't mind being victimized, they wouldn't be a problem for me. I'm the police chief. The people that get on my nerve are these people that's getting their car stolen and they don't like it. Okay, this person that's being assaulted every time they walk down to the corner to get a loaf of bread, they don't like it. So they're screaming at me, do something about these people. So I started looking out my little window and I'm seeing these people who are the offenders and they getting on my nerves. They aggravating me. They upsetting the apple cart. Then I look over here and there's another group of people who are always being victimized. Something's always happening to them. They're always upset, hurt, and they screaming for me to fix it. So I'm looking at this group of people and they getting on my nerves. They are victims. Now we got offenders, we got victims, and then we got politicians who's a whole nother level of aggravation. Wow. Okay. Really now, I mean, speaking from the police, I put my police cap on again. Those were the three groups of people that made my life miserable. But I hope that when I look back over my career and other people look back over my career, they'll say that he didn't fall into that trap where he stopped seeing people and just saw groups that he had to deal with or circumstances he had to correct. Now, let's take that globally. Let's take that. Forget that I was a police chief or the Chief Bell was a police chief. let's forget that for a moment. Let's just talk about men who trying to make a difference in the world that we live in. Are we not doing some of the same things when we start looking out there and we see this Generation X crap that everybody wants to throw? We don't see people anymore. We see these young thugs. Right. We see these people, we see, okay, now we see this other side of people who are being victimized and circumstances aren't, and now it's easy. That's what I meant a while ago. It's very easy to just start categorizing people instead of dealing with them as people and as issues or as people with individual circumstances that lead to a group of people with circumstances that all need to be dealt with equally and even-handed. And we just start lumping them all in together. Now that right there is a problem, and that troubles me. So what Lev and his group is doing is taking the stigma off the offender, looking at him as a person that has a past, surely, but also has a future, and it also has a set of circumstances that we need to deal with on their own merit. Did I state your case? Or did I oversimplify that?
You did. No, you didn't. You did it just right, because all we want to do is make it happen.
We are a microcosm of that community. And if we follow the principle of W.E.B. Du Bois, we have a responsibility to reach down. Paul said the only reason to reach down is to pick somebody up. Uh-huh. And that's what he's doing with his program, and that's what he just eloquently explained, that we're looking at people. And if we get our self-interest, our self-aggrandizement, all that stuff out of the way, including our title, we can take a towel and clean the mess up.
Wow.
But
you
got to care first. You know what I mean?
You got to care.
And it's got to matter to somebody other than just a select few. Yeah, and the chief started earlier in the evening. He was talking about programs, and everybody's got a program, is the way he put it. And I've been on these panels, and I've witnessed these panels, and I sit there, and we sit there, and we just go blah 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 blah, and everybody can agree that we need to talk about it. But what we're talking about is just talking about it, so we can talk about it, and then and when we get through. Yeah, we can talk about it.
Right.
I'm tired of being in that conversation.
Right.
Okay.
And you know what? And most people start those programs to get a job for themselves.
Right.
Yes, sir.
They getting a job for here we are. Chief's not getting paid. I'm not getting paid. He's not getting paid. You're not getting paid. But we're talking about those same issues. And the one thing that I'm happy about, even if we have to go back all those many years, we are bringing what I coined at Harvard University, solutions to otherwise insoluble problems.
Outstanding.
Solutions to otherwise insoluble. We're just going to talk about it.